think no doubt we are all sleeping much more soundly in our beds thanks to an organization in the UK called Prevent. This is a government counterterrorism think tank, and they have successfully identified the main threats to British democracy. They are George Orwell, Joseph Conrad, and William Shakespeare. These vicious radicals, through their works, have been inspiring great acts of terror against Britain that threaten our way of life. So I was thinking for this video, we're going to take a look at a piece of Shakespeare that I particularly like, John of Gaunt's speech in Act 2, Scene 1 of Richard II, and we're going to find out just how radical, how extreme Shakespeare really was. This royal throne of kings, this sceptred isle, this earth of majesty, this seat of Mars, this other Eden, demi-paradise, this fortress built by nature for herself against infection and the hand of war, this happy breed of men, this little world. This precious stone set in the silver sea, which serves it in the office of a wall, or as a moat defensive to a house against the envy of less happier lands. This blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England, this nurse, this teeming womb of royal kings, feared by their breed and famous for their birth, renowned for their deeds as far from home, for Christian service and true chivalry, as is the sepulchre and stubborn jury of the world's ransom, blessed Mary's Son. This land of such dear souls, this dear, dear land, dear for her reputation through the world, is now leased out. I die pronouncing it, like to a tenement or pelting farm. England bound in with the triumphant sea, whose rocky shore beats back the envious siege of watery Neptune, is now bound in with shame, with inky blots and rotten parchment bonds. That England that was wont to conquer others hath made a shameful conquest of itself. So, just for a little bit of context here, John of Gaunt is lamenting the fate of his country under leadership that is simultaneously weak and oppressive, has a disastrous foreign policy, and is leading a country that is increasingly divided and factious. People are at each other's throats, people are screaming at each other, they want to fight each other. So, of course, it's absolutely nothing like modern Britain. Let's go into the details a bit. So he starts off, this royal throne of kings, seat of Mars, Eden, demi-paradise, all sounds very nice, maybe a little too particularist for the tastes of the modern British government, bit too patriotic, one might say. He even refers to England as this little world, like cut off, like it's its own culture and its own civilization. Makes Shakespeare sound like a bit of an extreme lever, and he mentions men, this happy breed of men. Not very gender inclusive there. Another good reason why Prevent would have been so upset with this work. He then goes on and it gets worse, incredibly triggering for many of our friends out there. He describes how the water around Britain can be used as a moat for defense, when in fact the wisdom of our current government has demonstrated how that water is actually a conduit in which to bring ever-increasing numbers of foreigners into the country. There we go. This is why Shakespeare is seen as such an extremist. Moving on, this blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England. He talks about the kings of England who are feared for their breed, famous by their birth. Well, that does sound very genetically orientated. It's almost as if he thinks people inherit from their ancestors certain traits that they then pass on to their children, and that these can have a factor into how successful they are in life. That is definitely not what we believe in socially mobile 21st century progressive England. He also emphasizes the Christian nature of the English monarchy and of English culture. He talks about their Christian service and true chivalry. It's almost as if at Shakespeare's time, England was not a multi-religious country, completely unlike the country we have today. He also mentions the J word. We're not going to get to in YouTube, but that definitely sounds naughty. Sounds like something we shouldn't do. And then he mentions this blessed Mary's Son. Again, very Christian. No doubt very upsetting to people in Prevent. Brings us to this section where he describes how England is being treated like a tenement, a pelting farm. It is being leased out. Property is being taken by the monarch, his nephew, and in fact, and given to other people. It turns out that the country doesn't belong to its people. People don't have an inherent right to their own land, their own country, and that the government can just give it away as they see fit. Yeah, I can also see here why the establishment in England, in modern day England, might be very, very suspicious of works like this. Brings us the last two lines that I chose to quote for this video, and this is the part that always gets me in the speech. You know, it's notable that it's the opening lines of this speech. You know, the throne of Mars, the sceptered isle. That's the most famous part of this monologue. And for good reason. That's the nice part. And before I'd read the play years ago, I that's the part I had already heard quoted many times. But actually, when I read the play, I realized, it's actually not about the joy of patriotism. It's the suffering of patriotism, the misery of seeing your country being destroyed by traitors, by its own government who don't seek the best interest for it. And so it's actually these last two lines that always stuck with me after that always really get me in the gut. That England, that was wont to conquer others, hath made a shameful conquest of itself. That really is the situation we find ourselves in, isn't it? We've gone 70 years we've gone from colonizer to colonized in a very, very quick space of time. We no longer have it's not just about the power or the global influence, but there's something in our will and our confidence that seems to have gone away. And Shakespeare as a writer, as a patriotic writer, suggests that can actually be won back. Because, of course, the lesson, not the only lesson, but a result in the story of Richard II is that these weak, oppressive governments get overthrown. They get taken out by Bolingbroke, who becomes Henry IV. No wonder Prevent didn't like this play, doesn't like Shakespeare.